The next thing that we're going to look at is the preferences screen. In Android, we can specify a special type of layout file called a preference layout, and that preference layout is basically an XML file that is like the regular layout files that we use in Android, except it's designed specifically for preferences. And it allows us to create specific kinds of preferences that are commonly used in Android applications so that we can present the user with choices that they can make about what kind of settings that we're going to store. It'll automatically handle the saving and retrieving of these values when we use this preference screen. So let's take a look at some of the preferences that are available. The first one we can use is a checkbox preference. And this one we can specify text for when the checkbox is off, or different text when the checkbox is on. Second, we can use an edit text, and this can be used just to take a string value or some value from the user. When they click on the edit text, it'll give them a dialog box, and you can specify the title and what the message is, and then they can type in some text, and that'll be saved into that preference. The next one is a list, and this can be used to create a limited selection, like red, green, blue here. And then there's a plain preference, which doesn't really do anything, but we can use that if we just want to display a value from a preference. Like let's say we've stored a preference that was generated by some other mechanism. It can't really be changed, but we want to display what the value is. We can use that here. We can also create a preference screen that allows us to have some sub-navigation here. So if I use a preference screen, then when the user clicks the preference screen, it opens up this new screen. And here you can see on this new preference screen, I'm demonstrating another kind of preference, which is a ringtone preference, which basically lets them select a ringtone that's on their phone. So you can use this for different sounds. If you wanted to play sounds, you can have them select a particular sound. It just makes it a lot easier than trying to do all the querying to figure out what ringtones are on their phone. And then finally, we have a category. And if you use this preference type, then you will basically get this little divider here, and then the preferences you put inside here will be below this divider. So that's all the controls, and I'm going to show you now how you can utilize this control. What we're going to do is go ahead and create a preference for our protein tracker application, and we're going to create a preference so that we can store the amount of grams of protein that we want to consume in a day versus what our desired goal is. So we're going to allow the user now to store as a preference what the desired daily goal is. So in order to do this, we're going to need to create a new preference file. So in order to do that, all we have to do is go into this XML folder, and then we're going to right click and we're going to say new, other, and then we're going to choose Android XML file. And then here we're going to say that the type of resource we'd like to create is preference, and then we'll call this our main preferences. And then you can see that it's going to put it in the res.xml folder. And now we have this main preferences XML. And we can look at the XML view of this, and you can see here that it is basically, we have a preference screen as a root element, and then we're going to add like those checkbox controls and list controls for preferences. We're going to add those. I like to use the user interface to do it because it's a lot easier. So in this case, what we really want to do is add a preference where the user can enter the amount of grams of protein that they want to consume in a day. So in order to do that, all we have to do is click this add button, and you can see all the different types of preferences that we talked about here: a checkbox, an edit, a list, the regular preference, category, screen, ringtone. In this case, what we really want is an edit text preference. So we'll choose that. And now we need to fill out the values for this. You can see we have some attributes for a dialog preference and for preference. If we expand this attributes for a dialog preference, you can see we can specify a dialog title. And normally you would create a string file for this, but here I'm just going to go ahead and hard-code the string, and we'll say enter grams of protein. And then for the dialog message, we're going to actually, for the message, let's make it enter grams of protein. And then we'll put protein per day. And then for the attributes for the preference, we need a key. Just like when we had manually done the shared preferences, we used a key to get the value out. In this case, we're going to use grams per day as the key. And then the title of this will be grams per day. And then we can put a summary here if we wanted to say what this setting is for. But in this case, we're just going to leave this blank. So this is all you have to do. And if we look at the XML that this has generated for us, we can see that we have this edit text preference, and it's got a dialog message. All these values are filled in for us. I prefer to use this way to do it, but you can edit the XML directly if you want. But that's a simple way to do this, and that's all we have to do. Now we can just save this file, and next what we're going to have to do is actually create an activity, a preference activity, in order to load this up.